Hey, it's the Mike Rogers Show. Mike Rogers here with you. And today we have a very special guest. One part pop, one part poison, all poolside glitter punk. Hayley and the Crushers offer up a tsunami of bold bad girl power, anointed as the naked embodiment of power pop punk by new wave icon Josie Cotton. The Crushers have moved to a more dramatic comic book style metamorphosis. So, ladies and gentlemen, please help me to welcome the queen of power pop punk, Miss Hayley Cain.
Hello. What a wonderful introduction. Thank you, Mike.
No, well, that's my introduction. So how about you introduce yourself to us?
My name is Hayley Cain, as you already know. I am a musician, a guitar player, a vocalist, a writer, a mother of two small Chihuahua mixes.
Oh, I thought you were going to say two small children.
No, two small Chihuahua mixes who you may hear bark in a moment here. And I am one half of the nucleus that is Hayley and the Crushers, which is myself and my husband, Dr. Kane, Esquire, who plays bass in the band. Oh. And we form the kind of nucleus of the band. And then we have these amazing Crusher drummers that we are so lucky to pick up all around the world and go on tour with. So we're lucky that way.
Okay. So you play guitar and you sing, and yes, your husband plays bass. And then you pick up a studio musician or someone like that to sit in with you, like when you do live shows or record.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say studio. They're just friends, friends that we meet on the road. So they're just like good people, good friends. We've got a drummer in Detroit, a drummer in California, kind of. It allows us to tour really easily and just hop in the van. When you're married, it's kind of nice because I can book and know exactly where we're going to be in 6 months. And then whoever can join us can join us. So it's kind of it's like a cult, if you will.
A cult. Well, that's actually a good idea, doing it that way. Glenn Matlock comes to Japan. Well, he used to come to Japan like every year, and he would come here by himself. But when he came and he played, he would have different Japanese musicians as his back band, which I thought, well, that's a good idea.
It is. I learned from the best. I mean, there's so many great bands that do it. And especially if we were to go to Japan, when we go to Japan and come crash on your couch, we will probably do that. We'll probably pick up some people in Japan. So that's just,
that would be way cool.
That would be way cool. And I'll just put it out there that it will be way cool because I'm going to manifest that this is going to happen at some point.
Yeah, I think you would probably like Japan.
I'm pretty sure Japan would like me too.
Yeah. So, tell us, Hayley, can you tell us about your childhood? Like, how did did your mom and dad say, hey, you're going to play piano and you're going to play Bach and Beethoven and stuff? Or how did you how did you get started in music? And then like your first bands, and then how it came to be Hayley and the Crushers and all the bands in between.
Okay, well, I'll try to keep it interesting. I would like to say that I don't think my parents still really know what I do or what I play.
Really?
They were definitely not invested in the music career side of things. I've always been a writer. I've always been in my journals and my notebooks writing poetry. As a little kid, I was kind of a loner and I was writing down my thoughts all the time. Eventually, I thought, well, I want a guitar and I want to put this to music. I don't even know what music got me wanting to pick up the guitar, but I do remember like my mom had a GoGos CD, the Beauty and the Beat CD, which we all know is a classic. She was in New York in the 1970s, and she also had like Patti Smith and like Blondie and stuff around the house. And I feel like that influenced me in tremendous ways that I cannot even fathom when I was 6, 7 years old, dancing around and singing to some of these songs, some of these kind of punky songs. So there's that. But the guitar, I think, just sprang from my natural desire to just I'm writing all this stuff of what I'm feeling inside. I'm kind of this weird loner kid with all these emotions. I should get a guitar. And the guitar was great because I had growing up in Southern California, we lived at the beach, and that was all fun and games. But then when I was 10 years old, my parents moved us up to rural central coast of California, where there was like no one around. It was super rural. It was super just like farmland. And so they said, okay, here's a barn. You can play your electric guitar in the barn. So I would just go out there and I would blast the Sex Pistols and learn those songs. I would blast Operation Ivy and learn those songs. I would blast the Ramones. I would learn those songs. I was blasting all sorts of music out there. They couldn't even hear what was going on. And all they knew was that I was, coming back feeling empowered. And so they were supportive in that sense. But in the sense of it being a career, I was always going to be a writer. I went to school for journalism. I am a freelance writer. That's my job. So it's almost like music is like this nice little naughty desire secret I get to go and enjoy. And it feels very much like its own little romance that I get to have in my life.
Well, that's really cool. I've got two things to tell you. First off, I was at the GoGos debut show, their first debut show. And they played with the Dickies, and there was one more band, but I don't remember who it was. And the Dickies came on, and the Go-Go's, I love the Go-Go's, okay? So, but they were terrible.
Yeah, I've heard that.
They were terrible, and they couldn't play. And anyway, Stan Lee gets up on the stage, and he's got a roll of newspapers and $1 wrapped around it, so it looks like $100 or something like that. And he says, "Hey, I've got all this money to give to some girl who comes up here on stage and shows me what sex really is." And Belinda Carlisle jumped up on the stage, screamed like a banshee, took her shirt off, and she was probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 yards. No, not that far, 5 or 6, 10 feet in front of me. And she was just standing there naked. And everybody, I was just like, am I supposed to be seeing this? that was, yeah.
Iconic story. And now to think that they're like in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I know.
Up there with the Pantheon.
I know. I was so surprised they got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame so early.
Early? Well, I mean, they're all still alive, I suppose. And that's good.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, they're all still here.
I think it was their first vote, wasn't it? The first vote for the Go-Go's. Yeah,
I believe so. They were never really, I don't believe they were ever discussed before. I mean, that was kind of part of the issue, I think. They were never taken seriously. And the songs are really good, they're great songs.
Wait, I have another bit of trivia to tell you.
Oh, yes.
Do you know the Go-Go's never had a #1 hit?
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, Belinda Carlisle had 2 or 3, but the Go-Go's all #2s. All of them were #2.
Right. They were all top 5, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Top 10.
Yeah.
But you're right. A #1, and she had like Heaven is a Place on Earth. Was that a #1?
That's it. Yeah. That was a #1. And I don't remember the names of the others. I never remember the names of the songs, Hayley. I'm really sorry.
You can.
But I remember. I remember She Drives. Is that the name of it?
Yes.
I love that song.
Thank you so much. You remembered a song title. Good job, Mike.
That rarely happens. That rarely happens. And then the second thing I was going to tell you, I was using my ESP here. Your parents moved you to San Luis Obispo.
Yes.
I've been there many times.
So it's pretty boring.
Well, I'm from Ventura. That Ventura used to be pretty boring too.
Yeah. Yeah, you have that connection. I know we've talked about that in the past, that Central Coast connection. And it was good in some ways. I'll tell you, it was good because there wasn't a lot going on. So I had to make my own fun. And I learned a lot of those songs by ear. I, sat there and learned those songs. And then when I was 16 and my parents split up and I moved back down to Southern California, I joined an all-girl band at Redondo Union High School, which you probably know about Redondo Union.
Yes.
And we had a little girl troupe that was real fun, and it was very short-lived. And I feel like that was my first taste of real freedom of okay, I could take this little secret romance I'm having with the guitar and maybe I could perform. I was never a performer, My sister was into drama. I was never the ham. I wanted to be the ham. I wanted to be the colorful, bright, person on stage that you see now. And I wasn't that. So I kind of had to grow into that person. And it took me several years to finally start theCrushers and put my name on it. And I think putting your name on a band is a great way to like force yourself not to give up and to go, I'm going to be in the front of this band, whether people like me or hate me, my name's on it,
Yeah. So what was the name of your very first band?
Well, it was called Ballroom Burlesque, which I feel like it's sort of a ballroom blitz kind of idea where that's a great song, of course. And this idea of like the femininity with the sexual, raunchy. We were just 16-year-old girls just, playing teen centers and Hollywood. We played Hollywood a couple of times. We played, backyard shows in Wilmington and just real scruffy kind of places like Southgate and Compton. And I really cut my teeth at some of these like more hardcore aggressive shows. And it's funny that I ended up writing pop punk music, because I kind of came from more of that like Southern California, like the kind of dregs of the hardcore scene was still happening.
Oh, yeah.
And I do like a lot of that stuff. I like Agent Orange. I love, Circle Jerks and Black Flag. But my real soul, comes from K-Earth 101, which is all the oldies. Oldies station, and listening to bands like the Shangri-Las, listening to bands like the Supremes, listening to all those classic hits of the 50s and 60s that the Ramones were accessing in the 80s. And so I feel like it's kind of weird how I ended up in such a pop driven group. But I would say my band after Ballroom Burlesque, it would be Magazine Dirty, which was a more kind of 77 style, more masculine kind of punk band. So I feel like I kind of got a taste of everything along the way. And now I'm like,
In any of those bands, are any of the other musicians still playing?
No, no. I feel like, it's funny when you're like the most into it and you can tell.
Yeah. Yeah. I
know. And I know that because you've been in bands and you've talked to me about this stuff, and it's like you kind of know you're that weirdo. I mean, from an early age, I always knew I was that weirdo. Like the minute I started writing, I'm like, I'm gonna do this the rest of my life. The minute I got a guitar, I'm like, I'm gonna do this the rest of my life. It's a passion that just it's like I always say punk rock saved my life and it destroyed my life, because now there's no way out. And I'm just going to have to keep doing this until I'm 89 years old.
Well, that's a good goal to have. The Shonen Knife just celebrated their 40th anniversary.
Woo!
And now, Code, I don't remember if she told me, but I heard that she said they're going for their 80th anniversary. And I thought, you'll be 100 years old. Oh, yeah, Japanese women live. Yeah, okay.
And they look good doing it. And they're out there. And I love that. More power to them. That's amazing.
So I also heard that you played in a country band, or Hayley and the Crushers were a country band?
No. So my husband, Dr. Kane, who plays bass in the Crushers, we met through country music. This actually is a great roundabout way of explaining kind of my return back to rural California after being in the punk scene and kind of burning out on all of the partying and the kind of crazy shows. I moved back to rural California in San Luis Obispo County. And I was like, you know what? I want to learn something completely different. I want to just learn the banjo. And so I was getting into bands. I was getting like old Loretta Lynn and Waylon Jennings at the time. Yeah. And these, outlaw country, like people that were punk rock, but country, Conway Twitty. And so I was like, I'm going to learn the banjo. And I had no friends at the time because I'm basically moved away from the city, didn't know anybody anymore in my, my old stomping grounds. And so I thought, what better way to be constructive with my time, living in my dad's basement as a early 20s screw up, I'll learn banjo. And so I learned banjo. And through that country scene, I met a wonderful, who I thought was a cowboy named Reed Cain. And he wore a full fringe shirt with a cowboy hat, Wranglers, cowboy boots, all of it. He was in a band called Red Eye Junction that was like the second coming of Hank Williams Sr. And I thought this man was the most amazing man I'd ever met in my life. And it turned out he was not a cowboy. He just likes country music. He's into punk rock. He's a surfer. He owns a comic book store. And that's kind of how we met. And I said, you're doing country music? And he said, you're doing country music? I was like, let's do country music together. So we kind of put that sort of our attitudes together and created this sort of campy kind of country band called Tarweed 2 and the Two Time Boys, which is like a small local thing. We only put out one little 7-inch, but we fell in love during that time. And that was my first tour together. You know, even before he bought me a wedding ring, he said, you know, do you want to get married and get a wedding ring, or do you want to go on tour? And I said, I want to go on tour. So I did. And he took me.
Married to who? Married to who?
He took me on tour, and I said, I don't want to go on tour. This is horrible. You know, that first tour, I learned so much. And so, you know, through that time, I mean, we've made so many records together, all the Crushers records, Magazine Dirty records. Every single week we're working on demos, and it's part of our passion and our love. So it's like part of our relationship, you know? So that's kind of how we came together. Yeah.
So then you came together as a country band, or were you a country band, or were you a punk band?
So that was I was part of Red Eye Junction, and we did Tarweed 2. And then we both started Magazine Dirty, which was like this sort of hardcore 77 kind of style punk band that was kind of fun because we got to open for all sorts of cool people like Jello Biafra and Flag and Agent Orange. And we were like that hometown hero punk band. And that was fun because I was in my early 20s and I was meeting all these legendary people that I looked up to. Maybe I shouldn't have looked up to too much. And, you know, that was all happening. But then I realized the next evolution of what you're getting at is I was like, well, I was playing second guitar in that band. I was playing like rhythm guitar. I was giving some of my songs to the singer who was sort of like an Iggy Pop style singer. And he would just writhe around and he had no shirt on and he, you know, just such a fun front man. But I was like, man, I want to sing some of these lyrics I'm giving you. And I'm hearing you're not doing it the way I would do it. And so I, in my mid-20s, was like, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I got to do it now. And that's where the Crushers came out. And I said, I'm going to start my band called the Crushers. It's going to be an all-girl band, back to my roots. But the girls that I ended up being in a band with ran off with each other. And Dr. Kane, he said, you know what? He had never played bass in his life. And he's like, I'll play bass. And I was like, I don't want you in the band. I love you, but we're married. We're already this other band together. I needed my own thing. And he played bass like a guitar, and he played all those great licks that you kind of hear in Crusher songs, those like real cool bass lines. And I said, okay, you're in. And so, you know, I can't get rid of him. So we're just like doomed.
Yeah. It would be tough to tell him, honey, what's for dinner tonight? Oh, and by the way, you're out of the band, okay? So
nothing personal, but you know, you're just not what we're looking for at this juncture. So hopefully that answers your question. And the Crushers started around 2016, so that's we're more sort of new, but sort of been around for a bit.
The Crushers started what year?
2016.
2016. Oh, yeah. So okay, when you were a kid, though, what was the first record you bought? And what was the first concert you went to? And it can be really embarrassing. It's okay. It's okay. Because those are the funniest ones.
Well, my friend, I'm a Spice Girls generation. I'm a vintage millennial. So I think it was a double whammy for like the CD I went and purchased. Like, this isn't my first punk CD. This is just my first CD. It was like Titanic, the soundtrack. And My Heart Will Go On, you know, Celine Dion, and Spice Girls, like a Spice Girls that had like 2 songs on it when they did singles, like CD singles. Yeah. And I was probably like 9 years old, 10 years old. And my first punk show, I went to community punk shows all around my little town. And like, there were all these little things, but my real first show was at a Grange Hall in San Luis Obispo. You might know it, the slow Grange Hall in the middle of nowhere. It's like in the middle of a field, and it was TSOL and full like face paint on Jack Grisham, which was kind of cool. He had like the whole thing, and the Casualties, and that was in 2000. Yeah, that was like 2001 or 2, and I was about 14 at the time. And that was like my first real punk show. And the minute it started, I got punched in the face accidentally.
Oh,
just like the crowd, you know,
yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing and I got an elbow to the face. And I now to this day, you know, I'm always in the pit just with my elbows out, like nobody messed with me. But yeah, so that was kind of my first foray into it. But as like a youngster, I liked all sorts of 90s bands like Weezer and Cake and all sorts of alternative rock, Butthole Surfers, and the stuff that my friends' big brothers and big sisters were listening to. And like, that's how I found Operation Ivy and some Lookout Records bands and Green Day and Screeching Weasel. And all these bands kind of came from filtering down from the brothers and sisters, you know, the older generation. So,
wow. Well, now I can blackmail you because now I know that your first records were, I can't even remember, Celine Dion and the Spice. Well, that's pretty embarrassing, Hayley.
It's really embarrassing. But to be completely honest, this actually does bring me back. This actually this redeems me. Okay. So the one place my sister and I were allowed to go when we were little, when we were like real little, was this antique barn. And this is why I'm obsessed with antique outfits and clothing and style. It was like the one place. And we would go and we'd buy vintage Barbies. And I had a little toy vintage record player. And I did buy Donkashane by Wayne Newton.
Wow.
And I just bought it sight unseen, 25 cents, didn't know what it was. And I played it on the wrong speed. And my parents to this day make fun of me because it was like, Donkashane, darling, Donkashane. Thank you for. And so maybe that redeems me, maybe not. But I feel like I was a record collector or something because I was like picking up these 25-cent records that were all, I mean, there were some gems in there. Like, I think the Ventures was in one of those hauls that I got as a kid. And I just thought that the record player was like a cool contraption. So I think that redeems me.
Okay. Well, so let me ask you about your writing. You say you write for a magazine or what do you do?
I have my own company. It's me. So I went to school for journalism. I got my degree in print journalism, believe it or not. And I got out of school in 2008 when all of the print journalism and magazines were going, woo, crash and burn. You know, that was a hard time. And I ended up working for community newspapers. So I became basically a gal about town journalist, community news. I ended up doing a lot of food and wine writing. So I did some magazines, some newspaper, you know, did some stuff for Bust Magazine. I still do here and there. But my main bread and butter, which is kind of like people don't know this about me, is wine writing. So I do a lot of wine and California tourism copywriting, where I'm just talking about how awesome Highway 1 is and how beautiful the Cabernet Sauvignon is and blah, 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 blah. I'm sure it's all true. But I do a lot of like marketing writing, and it's basically centered around all of the allure of the California dream. And so I write about that still to this day. That is where I make my money. And on the side, like I do other projects through my freelance, you know, my LLC. So I basically I'm a writer at service. I'm at your service and I do a lot of different things. So it's not as glamorous.
Are you a sommelier? Sommelier? I don't even know how to say it. Yeah.
No, you know, I'm a BSer, you know, and a lot of those sommeliers. That the difference between me and them is wide in the fact that they really do. They can literally taste a wine and say, this is from, you know, the Rhone region of France. This is this block, this vineyard. But over here, I can make it sound like I know what I'm talking about enough to sell the wines. So I like to think of it like the people I work for, I like them. I like the businesses. And I do genuinely love California. And I love, like, I am that tour guide. When my girlfriends come visit, like I am that person that's taking everyone to Hearst Castle, taking everybody wine tasting. So I do like writing about this stuff. And I certainly wouldn't write about anything that like I didn't agree with or I just didn't love. So it's a fun life. I mean, I do enjoy it.
Wow. I used to write for newspapers and magazines and stuff too. And the same thing. I used to write a what's it called? A zodiac forecast.
And horoscope.
Horoscope. I forget English. So I would just make it up.
That's why we're friends. I mean, I feel like we're friends because, you know, BS can sense BS, and like BS is magical because we all need these people to tell us what the heck the planets are talking about. And like, we don't know, but it makes us, I feel comforted knowing that like someone like you is out there writing my horoscope for me. Like, I'll read the horoscope all day long. So, and you know, a lot of,
go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say like, just about, so I did a lot of like profiles on people and businesses, and like, it's almost like what you do, you know, you're talking to musicians and stuff, like it validates their story, even if they're not these huge stars. And I think there's something noble about that, because journalists don't get paid a lot, but they are out there saying, hey, this guy who's doing some great pizza over here, or this band, they're great. And like, it really does make a difference in these people's lives. And I do feel like there is something to be said about that. And I hope that people continue to go into like the writing fields and maybe do it, even though it pays nothing.
That's right.
Terribly, as you know.
Terrible. Well, anyways, so Hayley, I'd like to do this this interview in two parts. So this is part one. So we're gonna say goodbye here. There he is. We're gonna say goodbye here, and we're gonna come back, and I want to hear more about Hayley and theCrushers and the details, and I want to hear about Josie Cotton and everything. I want to hear everything. So anyways, ladies and gentlemen, today's guest was Hayley Cain from Hayley and theCrushers, the queen of power pop. This is the Mike Rogers Show. If you like this video, go down here, click like and subscribe, and we'll see you back here. Hey, that's the doctor. And we'll see you back here tomorrow, okay, Hayley? Bye.
Bye.
Bye.